Welcome to WBC Faster Together, the LinkedIn Live series of Women Business Collaborative. I'm Gwen Young, Chief Operating Officer of WBC. Today, we are joined by a true woman leader, Lorraine Siegel of Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation and Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of Alliance Strategies. WBC is an unprecedented alliance of over 75 women business organizations and hundreds of business leaders building a movement to achieve equal position, pay, and power for all women in business. Through collaboration, advocacy, action, and accountability, we are mobilizing thousands to create momentum and accelerate the pace of change. We live our commitment to DEI, and members of our leadership, a diverse board of directors, and our advisory and leader councils include more than 34% people of color. Please check the chat for our 9 action initiatives through which we aim to accelerate change and join our movement at wbcollaborative.org. Each week in this series, we offer different ways to advocate change and accelerate impact by presenting data, research, and best practices, by lifting up the power of women's voices for change, and by showing the importance of cross-generational collaboration and the allyship of men in the movement. Today, we want to talk about advancing women leaders through mentoring, coaching, building networks and alliances. Lorraine Siegel is founder, chair, and CEO of Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation and vice chair of the board of directors of Alliance Strategy. She serves on multiple boards, public and private and non-for-profit, and provides services as an executive coach to selected CEOs. Welcome, Lorraine. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. I love Zoom because we can do this kind of cross-coast conversation. Let's start with the foundation. You know, you are very passionate about giving back and mentoring, and specifically as we were talking about peer-to-peer mentoring. Tell us more about your goals and objectives, and also, has this work changed in the past few years?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Well, I never had a mentor. All of the years in my early career when I was studying and then became a lawyer and then became CEO of multiple different companies, and even as a board director, I never had somebody to guide me on my way. I made a lot of mistakes that I could have avoided, and some mistakes that were good because I learned from them. And it would have been so much easier and so much happier had I had somebody, and especially a powerful woman, whom I could turn to and ask all the questions that nobody seemed to have an answer for. In fact, I had the non-mentor. I had lots of people who told me what I couldn't do. And of course, being like a red flag to a bull, of course, that was exactly the direction I went in. But I always thought to myself, that would be something I would like to do for other women if I ever make it, which I was very grateful to be able to get to a point in my life when I could actually do that. So when I sold my last business, I decided to set up endowment funds. And I did that in South Africa, where I come from, where my private school that I went to, I pay for a little black girl, a white girl from 9th through 12th grade to go to that private school. And now I'm helping our young black lady to become an actuary at the University of Cape Town. I'm very proud of her. She should be graduating this year. And then I set up another endowment at my law school in Los Angeles, where I got my JD, and another one at the business school where I got my MBA in California. And I looked for exceptional women. And then when I had reached about 24 women, it was getting a little onerous because a lot of them needed more than just support for, I gave them money for their schooling and also my commitment to mentor them for the rest of my life. But some of them needed help in other areas as well. And I realized that maybe my focus should be on the women who were like me. And there were a couple of them who were very senior women who had gone back for MBAs or JDs. And I thought, you know, that's my sweet spot. So I continued to mentor for the rest of my life the ladies who I had given scholarships to for their schooling. But I created a 501c3 called the Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation. And we pivoted. And we now are 100 women leaders. We have 3 different groups. One group is women who are at the C-level. Another group is women who were at the C-level and are now on boards. And the third group are women who are aspirational, 1 or 2 levels below C-level. And we combine these groups together to enable all of those women to reach their level of happiness. And that's really the aspiration that we have, to bring happiness to all of our EWAs.
I love how you talk about that level of happiness, right? Because often we talk about rising to the top, right? We talk about ambition, we talk what you sort of should do and how you get there. Um, but yeah, I'd love to talk about more of that importance. We also often talk about mentorship or sponsorship sort of early on in your career, as you suggested. And yet we're finding in research, and most as you found in your career, that really at this C-suite and top level, those meaningful relationships, the sort of more than just networking. Can you talk about kind of what that looks like and what you mean by that? Because I think the way you're framing it is incredibly important.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. That's exactly my own experience. When I reached the C-level in multiple companies, I didn't have anywhere to turn. And there are a number of organizations of C-level women, but what I was looking for was a more intimate, focused kind of relationship. And so I had been an expert in strategic partnering from business to business. And I took some of that intellectual property and applied it to the area of peer-to-peer mentoring. And that's what our Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation does. We have a proprietary, metrics-driven peer-to-peer mentoring program. And each woman who comes in, and she's a C-level leader, will go through that program accompanied by a particular woman who's in the program who becomes her peer-to-peer mentor. And that is a lifelong commitment. We invest a huge amount of emotional energy in each woman who comes into our organization. And when we screen, not only for the success level, we're also screening for the commitment of that woman who comes in to actually be willing to mentor and pay it forward to another C-level leader. And it makes a huge difference in their careers.
Absolutely. I was talking to women about 7 years ago, younger in their career, saying this peer-to-peer is so important, right? You don't have to wait. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that much farther up from you, right? So it sounds like there's a bit of that going on. And when you talked about happiness as well and rising, I want to talk about sort of how women broaden their value, because we did a C-suite report based on 20 interviews of women that rose up into the C-suite. We released it September of this year. And one of the findings everyone says you need to broaden your value to the company. I want to hear from you, kind of what does that mean? And what are some tips for women who want to be in the C-suite or up at the CEO level?
Well, broadening your value within the company means that you are somebody who is not just a leader of your team, but is also known to be open to conversation across functions, across divisions, and you have to be able to speak in the language of the receiver of the information. So that's so important, to be a good listener, a good observer, as well as a good, in fact, that's what makes a good leader. And so a lot of what we do in the peer-to-peer area is we listen, we observe, and we enable our women to become much better leaders. And at the C-level, there are lots of things that politically happen within an organization, which there is no book for, there is no training for, no leadership program is going to tell you how political games are going to be played at that level. And even more important, when you're at 2 or 3 levels below C-level, the internal politics in almost every organization, they are significant. And that's really where a peer who's been through that and is at C-level and maybe moved on to board level can say to you, I have seen that picture before. I know exactly what you're going through. This is how you play it. And that's really where the advice becomes so significant. So the peer mentoring program is really centered around the enormous expertise of the women who have already been there and done that.
And we talk a lot too about sort of women of color rising up to these levels and being able to, you know, find those mentors or find those peers and those peer-to-peer. How are you helping kind of crack that piece of the puzzle? I mean, for example, in the Intel community, people are like, I rose up and there were no women mentors. You know, what are you doing?
I loved your statistic because we are 37% diverse. And the interesting thing about it is we don't look for diversity when we're screening applicants. We look for exceptionality. And of course, when you do that, it's across the spectrum of every woman leader out there. And so we happen to be 36% diverse. And there is tremendous lessons to be learned from diverse women because they encounter a lot of other problems that a non-diverse woman may not encounter. So we pile on to that as well. Unfortunately, we have enough C-level diverse women who have lived through that on many, many levels and have so much to offer. So it's, you know, it is a sisterhood. It's not a networking group. And we bring together groups of our women within the sisterhood to help on a particular issue that one of the leaders may be having. So her mentor is there to really connect her to the rest of the sisterhood and bring them together around her. And by the way, Gwen, it could be a political issue within her organization. It could be her wanting to get on a board and going into a board interview, and we'll put her through all of the preparation to do that. It could be an aging parent, or a problem with a kid who's trying to get into college. We are a sisterhood. We are not just professional. We're also a personal sisterhood.
I love that word sisterhood, because that's what we've been talking about at WBC. We're building a movement, but we talk about sort of the sisterhood, right? Of how, because it's all aspects of that. Have the past couple of years, how has that shifted the work that you've done, or how has that emphasized the building of that sisterhood? We hear everyone talking about the virtual world. You and I are able to have this conversation here. What does that look like in 2022 and going into 2023?
Well, it's been a definite challenge, and we pivoted into virtual, as everybody did. We actually launched 4 cohorts during COVID virtually. And it's so interesting how you can actually develop the bonding within the Zoom environment. It's not as easy, but it is possible. And we've learned a lot of techniques on how to connect with each other through a virtual environment. There's no doubt when the ladies come together, as we just did in our annual retreat about 4 weeks ago, the explosion of happiness and connection is just like nothing else I've ever experienced. And for all of us, we leave that kind of event feeling so much happier and just joyful, because you know that you're surrounded by support no matter what you may be going through in your life. And when I look at how our ladies' business environments have changed, that has been significant. And for many of them, they are empathetic leaders. And I think that women, many women, not all women, but many women come to the table with those kinds of skills. And in the alliances world, in the business world, I've certainly seen that as being true as well. Not to say that men don't have those skills, they do, but we have seen many of our leaders step up and become significantly empathetic leaders and try to embed that into the culture of very large companies in which they take part. Of course, for many companies, this has been a very trying time. Supply chains have been particularly challenging and continue to be in some environments. And in other businesses, they've exploded and expanded during the COVID years. So there is a settling happening right now. Certainly some of the technology companies that we see within our group, and we have a number of significant leaders within tech in our group, there are layoffs happening, and that's not a happy scene. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And of course, going into a recession means that some of our service industries are seeing the impact of that now too. So since we cover so many industries, from manufacturing, healthcare, aerospace, technology, all kinds of variety of food industries, there are changes being seen everywhere. And our ladies are flexible and know how to deal with change. And I think that managing through that in particular at this moment is going to be a core competency.
It's interesting because I'm thinking about 2 things as you've talked about, sort of 2 leadership skills, right? Empathetic leadership and sort of managing through change. You know, a little bit of that is risk, but also, you know, the McKinsey report that came out, you know, the Great Resignation, women are leaving in droves. They're leaving at the level of exactly where you're working. And yet when I hear you, you kind of sound hopeful, and you sound like, you know, there is an answer that, well, this is shifting. Is that a correct interpretation of what you're saying?
Yes, well, I'm always seeing the glass half full. So I'm a very optimistic person, and our program is its foundation of EWA is thinking positively about how to make your life a happy life. And so we really do look at the upside always. And when we go through the analysis and strategic mapping for each of our EWAs, we look at what the negatives are in their lives, and we enable them to create a plan to obviate the negative, because you cannot operate in a negative environment. It's not only it's destructive of the environment, but it's also destructive of your health. And so we focus very much on enabling our EWAs to come up with plans to obviate the negative. And at the moment, there's a lot of negative around us. By the way, we are a non-political, non-religious organization. And so we have women who are across the spectrum from very liberal to very conservative. We never discuss politics. And the result is that we have peace amongst the cohorts because it becomes very divisive if that happens. But positivity is part of what we're talking about, and it's really integrated into our program. So I do have a lot of hope. I think that the ingenuity of our women leaders, I see it every single day. Entrepreneurs who are facing very strong headwinds, who just roll up their sleeves and get in there and say, we've done this before, we did it in 2008, we can do it again, and we're going to turn this company around, we're going to cut where we have to, we're going to create new products, we're going to look at innovation, we're going to expand into new markets. And they just get up and do it. So I have great hope for our ladies and the 100 women within our organization, because I think they work from a position of positivity and expectation that things are going to be good.
I love that. And as a glass half full person myself, that resonates, but it also resonates too. I heard about some women, they leave corporate America, but then they come back and consult. They come back and say, here's how this, should be, could be, here's how we could change this. And I kind of want to shift it for the end of, we've talked a lot about the women and the happiness and kind of everything you're doing. From where you sit, what are the key actions that companies and organizations can do to really create those pathways or show that commitment to having diverse leadership at the C-suite and CEOs? Where do the companies and organizations play, in your opinion? What can they do?
Well, the one point which just mystifies me for any company that doesn't see this as an important thing to do, it's good for business. Take away the fact that it's a right thing to do. We all know that. It's good for business. Your bottom line is going to get better. Your top line may get better. The markets you access will increase. It just makes sense. And there have been enough studies that have been done by highly reputable organizations to prove that bottom line, top line, market access, market expansion, all of those things increase and do better when you have a diverse leadership, when you have a diverse population within your organization. And I've seen many companies that have moved in that direction, but just not all of them. So I think that, this is the proof is there. It's in the numbers. And that's what I prefer to look at, is the numbers and to quantitatively analyze what is happening. Amongst our ladies, 63% of them have negotiated a better position and risen in their careers. Actually, 83% of them have actually gone to new jobs. And not all of them have stayed in the same company, but the 63% is within the same company. So we've got women that are rising, they're changing, they're evolving, and many of the companies they are in are doing the same, but some of them are not. And unfortunately, there's a dearth of really outstanding leaders. So if you don't treat your leaders, diverse leaders and other leaders right, they're going to move. They're going to go somewhere else. And, it's not easy to bring somebody to that level of 2 or 3 levels below sea level in an organization. It takes years, it takes training, it takes integration into the culture. And to lose somebody at that level is a significant loss for a company. Our program hopes to prevent that from happening. And we do it because we have other women who have been in that situation and can help you learn how to play the game.
I love that. And it makes such sense, especially as we're coming out of COVID. I know you've been doing this for a while, but it sort of brings together that, it makes business sense. Employees need to be engaged. Everybody's whole life is their professional and their personal life. That piece of it, you're bringing that all together. And I love the way you're talking about that, but also with the numbers and the data and the evidence.
That's right. Gwen, one of the things you mentioned, personal life, and I think that's a very important issue. Being a group of women, many, if not all of the women have the primary care of the children. And I say it's not all, because a number of our women leaders have amazing spouses or partners who are the caregivers of the children. And those women have been enabled to be even more successful during this time. But for those who didn't have that kind of advantage, it's been a terribly difficult time. Childcare has been significantly impacting their ability to do what they need to do at work. And so we have seen very high levels of stress for a couple of our ladies, a number of our ladies who have had to deal with intermittent childcare issues. And this is at a very senior level. So they were normally out and about and traveling, and childcare was available to them. And then all of a sudden, everything fell apart. So there has been serious stress in many of our ladies over the past few years. It's beginning to resolve now, but I was very worried about some of them over the past 2 years of COVID. It was very tough.
No, it has been challenging, and I hope we can really make good on the commitments to understanding that, and good leave policies for sick and caregiving and so forth. So Lorraine, unfortunately, this is all we have time for, but thank you so much for being here and for your insights. Look forward to continued collaboration and discussion.
Thank you. I'm always so honored to be part of the Women's Business Collaborative, and I'm on the advisory council, so I'm a huge fan. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much. And for everyone, I'm sorry that is all we have time for. They invite you to wbcollaborative.org to learn more about our amazing advisory council champions like Lorraine, but also our work to increase women in the C-suite and boardroom, to address the underrepresentation of women across capital and other industries, and to advance a pipeline of women leaders that are going to bring gender, pay parity, diversity, equity, and inclusion to the business landscape. Join us weekly to keep up to date on our next guests in progress. Please go to our website where we have our latest report on women corporate tech executives in the C-suite. So it's that new position that's come up over 20 years of Chief Data Officer, Chief Information Officer. And follow us on the movement for gender parity in business by following us on social media at WB Collaborative on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Have a wonderful Thursday and a happy Thanksgiving to everybody.